Welcome to this edition of Peak Performers Podcast with your host, Thor Conklin. Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Welcome back to another episode of the Peak Performance Podcast. I'm your host, Thor Conklin, and today's show is actually going to be very interesting. I'm looking forward to it because we have an amazing guest that's actually in the same space that I am. I think we're just going to be going back and forth and sharing kind of best practices in each area. But let me introduce him. Todd. See, I already did it. We were just joking about this. Who's going to screw it up first? I did. I didn't even get the guy's first name right. You're not going to forget it now. Todd Palmer is a collaborative business advisor and CEO of Extraordinary Advisors, EA. Simply put, EA helps business leaders get shit done. Absolutely love that. As a CEO of a 6-time Inc. 5000 company, Todd knows the struggles that businesses face around the area of people, cash, strategies, and execution. And it all comes down to the people. Todd, welcome to the show.
Thor, thank you very, very much for having me, and thank you very much for getting my name right.
All I need is a couple tries, right? As entrepreneurs, it's not about getting it done right the first time. It's just about staying in there until you get it right.
Yeah, you are absolutely failing forward into success with my name, and I appreciate that.
I appreciate that as well. And we were talking right before the show, before we came on, is that you're a member of the EO group up in Detroit. You know, it's really interesting. I find wherever I go in the world, we connect with fellow EO members because there's something about that bond, that fraternity that we all have and we all share as entrepreneurs. And we know what it's like to get our first business up and running and the issues that we face every day. In your experience, what are some of the common themes that you see entrepreneurs struggle in that you don't necessarily have to, but it's just part of the process of going through the initiation? What do you see?
It's a great thing. One of the very first things I learned at my very first EO meeting, more than 15 years ago, was the phrase, an entrepreneur alone is an entrepreneur at risk. So I think a lot of entrepreneurs, one of the mistakes we make, and I'm living proof of this mistake, is that we tend to isolate during crisis. We tend to think we have to be the oracle, and thinking we have to have all the answers, which we don't. And then we develop an imposter syndrome that really can become paralyzing, not only for the entrepreneur, but for the company that we run. Then it manifests itself into focusing more on revenue versus margin, focusing on some of the wrong clients versus the right clients, not having the strong practices in processes, in operations, in accounting, in the HR space. So all those different things come into play. But the reality is, and I'm sure you can attest to this, the challenge really starts with the entrepreneur, because the bottleneck in every organization, more likely, is it going to be at the top of the company, not at the bottom.
Yeah, no question. It's funny. When I get with a group, I usually ask them, who's one of the most important people, person in the organization? And I said, take out your phone, take a selfie. And then towards the end, of course, I'm setting them up for something. At the end, I said, what's the biggest struggle with your organization? And what's the biggest block? And people start coming up with different things. I said, grab your phone. Remember that picture you just took a few minutes ago?
Yeah.
That's the one.
Exactly.
As you go, so does the entire organization. But I know one thing that you talk a lot about is people. We have a very tight job market right now.
We do.
Boy, we're talking about millennials and some of the uniqueness and issues surrounding that group. What do you tell executives? What do you tell entrepreneurs about people and how to find the best, how to train the best, how to keep them, and some of the issues, how to avoid some of the employment issues?
Well, what I point out to them is their brutal reality. I use the Stockdale paradox quite a bit. Here's where you'd like to go, but here's currently where you are. The reality is this: you've got the millennials that are coming into the workforce. You got the boomers that are going out of the workforce. You got the boomers leaving; they're going out the back door. You got a country right now at a capacity of about 4% unemployment, so we're at full employment. Then you take the labor participation rate, which sits underneath the unemployment number, and it's at a 46-year low. So we're at a low point of people actually participating in the workforce. Then you take a look at the millennials who are supposed to be coming in to replace the boomers and bolster the economy by joining the job market, and they're at a 13% unemployment rate as a category. So you got group going out, You got a group in the middle that's not working, and another group that's not coming in. So that really is what creates the biggest challenge. And the best piece of advice I give any entrepreneur or any small business is, what is the number one reason a typical employee gives in an exit interview for leaving the company? Number one reason is because they don't like who they work for. They don't like their boss. So the best thing you can do to be an employer of choice is to be a good boss.
And what's some of the strategies that you give them how to be a good boss? Because I find many of my clients have been suffering. It seems like things go kind of in waves. Right now it is, I want to be liked syndrome.
Sure.
Yeah. What do you tell clients that come to you and go, look, I just want to be liked. And they do everything to become liked, and we know what happens.
Well, I think the first thing you want to do is you want to be clear. You want to be clear in what you stand for. Who are your values? What are your values as an organization? And this really goes into the work of like a Simon Sinek or someone like that. We talk about why you do what you do. Why are you in the business that you're in? And once you can forecast who you are, and what you're not, people will follow that. Then your processes have to be strong. And at the end of the day, you've got to be, I think, three things that entrepreneurs really struggle with is you got to be authentic, transparent, and vulnerable. Here are the things I do well. Here are the things I don't do well. And as an employee, here are the things I need you to help me with. And every day is not going to be roses and sunshine. However, if we all start going in the proper direction, we can get a multitude of things accomplished. With millennials, you got to get them to participate in the process. They want to work in groups. You've got to know who you're dealing with. And the craziest thing about millennials, and I think as entrepreneurs we often struggle with this, is millennials are willing to trade dollars for flexibility and freedom. So are you going to be flexible in your mindset of how you work with them? Are you going to be flexible sometimes in the hours you work? Are you able to focus on the work product they produce? Or is it simply are you going to still be stuck in the old model of, hey, I need you here 8-10 hours a day? A lot of decisions entrepreneurs need to make nowadays.
I missed one of those: transparent, vulnerable, and what was the third one?
Yeah, authentic, transparent, and vulnerable. I call it ATV. It's easy to remember. And it's, I think, something that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with because it's risky to lean into the uncomfortable of being authentic, transparent, and vulnerable. You stand in front of your team and you announce to them that you don't have all the answers, and that as a collective, as a mind share, that the group of you can go forward versus having to be all things to all people all the time.
Yeah, no question. I find, for at least for myself, I found that I had difficulty in the past with vulnerability. And it was interesting because the more I tried to be less vulnerable and the more I tried to, just kind of protect, the more vulnerable I felt. And then when you actually step out on that stage and you actually just say, hey, this is what I am, this is who I am, this is what, look at it, completely vulnerable, that's actually when you feel your strongest.
Well, that's when I think, Thor, you're onto something. That's when your humanness really comes out. And people choose to work for you first and foremost because you're a human being, because there's something that resonates with them on why they want to work for you. In today's economy, employees have tons of choices. It's a candidate-driven market, as you well know. And they are going to pick and choose who to work with and who resonates with them on a human cellular level, not just are you a cool guy or are you a cool gal. It's, are you real? Are you real all the time? One of the things that I always tell people when I do interviews for my internal positions is, here are the 10 dumbest things we've done. Here are the 5 silly mistakes we've made. Here's what we did to pivot off of them. And once we did that pivot, here's why we became successful. But the reality is nobody is successful right out the gate. The reality is we're just people, and entrepreneurs and leaders have similar struggles to their employees. Sometimes we just have a different mindset on how to work through them.
Everybody talks about scale. How do I scale this thing fast and furious? And as we know, as seasoned veterans, speed sometimes can kill, but it's very attractive. Everyone wants to raise the cash. Everyone wants to scale quickly. What are some of the things that you tell your clients that are trying to scale quickly and some of the obstacles and roadblocks to avoid?
It's interesting you ask that fast question. So a lot of people will come to me, hey, I heard you made the Inc. 5000 6 times. You're growing fast and furious. I want to do that too. And the first thing I say to them, I said, yeah, we're on the list of the 5,000 fastest growing 6 companies, but we didn't push that accelerator route. We throttled the growth at anywhere from an 8 to 15 to 21% number. We kept it down there. We didn't go to triple digit growth factors. And our biggest focus was on how do we grow profitably, not growth for the sake of growth. Because I know that, if you really talk to the people who run the Inc. 5000, they'll tell you that a lot of the companies that make the list grow out of business because they grow too fast.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing is you can truly run out of cash. You can run out of opportunity. You can run out of runway. So for us, we very much focused on how do we have sustainable growth, controllable growth. Don't grow too fast, too quick. Be smart about it. And that's what I tell the entrepreneurs that I work with now through Extraordinary Advisors is, what kind of growth rate is going to be successful for you? How are you going to be able to sustain that? Right? And do you really want to build a company that's going to be a flash in the pan? And what is your reason for building it? I've got one guy I work with right now. His goal is to build that business to sell it. So he's got to be on a fast track. I got another guy I'm working with. He's like, I'm building it to pass it on to my family. I want to get my kids involved. And how do we do that? And I want the business to have a long legacy, not a quick cash exit. So ultimately, I try to find out what they want to do. How can we do it sustainably? How can we do it without necessarily having to take on VC or angel money in the beginning so that the owner equity portion is strong and solid?
Yeah, knowing your outcome is so important. I was literally just meeting with someone this morning. And at the end of the meeting, I just had to say, there's nothing we can do for you because you have no idea where you're going. And in this particular case, he wasn't able to affect change within the organization because there was another person in control of it. If you don't know where you're going, you've got a problem. And even if you do know where you're going and you can't make those changes, sometimes you're just stuck. There's no way out. And for him, actually, the best choice might be to completely pick something different industry, different venture.
Well, it's interesting too, as you go through dealing with a lot of entrepreneurs, they think they want to build a company, but I find a lot of these guys just want to build a job, and that's okay. But it's a different mindset, a different skill set, and a different way of going about things. Just because you're a great entrepreneur doesn't mean you're a great manager of people or processes. And are you willing to go out and get that integrator or that Roy Disney or that Walt Disney, that anchor to your crazy to really get those pieces built within the organization? Because oftentimes it requires more than just the entrepreneur.
I'll ask you this question because this came up in today's meeting. Gentleman said, I'm really just not that good of an influencer of people. I'm very good with the nuts, the bolts, the analytics. He goes, how important is the ability to influence others in me growing this organization? I won't give you my answer yet, but I'd like to hear what yours is. And I'll tell you what mine is later.
Well, if that was somebody I was working with, I think the first question I'd start with is what kind of culture do you want to create? Because that guy certainly sounds like he'd be a really good integrator, possibly the nuts and bolts guy. He could be really good in finance. But he's probably not going to be your chief rainmaker, your chief salesperson, because he's got to be able to inspire people. And I think oftentimes, it's amazing. Like when you read books like The Millionaire Next Door, and a lot of these really successful people have a very low-key persona. The low-key persona, it doesn't necessarily reflect into poor leadership, and they become very self-critical. So I would dig down and drill down a little bit further with him to see why he has that self-evaluation. Why does he see the world that way? And has he ever been in a spot where he's influenced people? And what kind of people has he influenced? At the end of the day, if he can't influence and motivate people, there's nothing wrong with that. But he's going to need to get that complement to that side of his personality to really be able to inspire people and maybe bringing somebody in from the outside.
Yeah, that was exactly the conversation. But if you can learn how to grow and how to expand and get better at influencing, it has effects in every aspect of your life, not just the business.
Well, some of the most important leaders that I've ever met are, you'd never know. They're not the guys who walk around with their chest puffed out at an EO or a YPO meeting. They're the guys sitting in the background. By the way, he's more liquid than the rest of us. He's very low key, very subtle. But when he talks, he doesn't talk all the time, but when he talks, boy, does he have something to say. He's the guy in the room who asks the best questions, and they're often the most successful because it doesn't have to be all about them. And when you really talk to them and you meet their teams, it's not about me as a leader, it's about we as a team. And, it's crazy how much more successful sometimes those guys are versus the guy who's out, beating his own chest.
Yeah. It's funny. I just made a post to Facebook this morning, and it was an article written about alpha women. And I made the post that says, I don't agree that this only applies to women. I think it applies to men and women equally. And it's the alpha males, the alpha females, the ones that are very, I call it bravado, where there's a lot of show, there's a lot of pomp and circumstance. They sometimes can be the most wounded or insecure on the inside, and they use that as kind of a defense mechanism. And I agree with you. I remember when I was younger, working in private equity out of New York, there was a guy that I went to a meeting. He sat in the corner. He had jeans on, didn't say anything, and everybody in the room was just like, "Who is that?" He just had a presence about himself. Come to find out, he was the chairman. Didn't say much, but when he spoke, boy, every word you just hung on.
Well, I think, too, going back to your statement about the person who's always out there in the look at me. The question, especially when I coach them, I always try to figure out and help them drive through it through some analytics and some tools I've incorporated is, what's the hole within you? What's missing within you that you've got to be so out there that do you think that money's going to fill that hole? Toys, houses, cars, or whatever. And it's amazing how many wounded children become entrepreneurs. And they become entrepreneurs, and they think the dollar is going to fix what's broken with them. They think this accolade or this award or whatever is going to fix what's broken with them. And the reality is they can't have outside things fix what's broken with inside of them. They've got to do the work internally within themselves to get where they want to be. And a lot of times, one of the things I always talk about when I'm on stage is defining success. And I used to define success through how much money, how many toys, this, that, or whatever I could acquire. Now, and again, this isn't my quote, it's Tony Robbins' quote, is success is doing what I want, when I want, with whom I want to do it with as often as possible. There's no dollar figure attached to that. I can go for a walk on the beach with my significant other and have a great time. I can go sit and, one of my favorite experiences from a few summers ago, my son was graduating college, and I went and played Frisbee golf with him for the very first time and had a great time. I didn't know what I was doing. It was his sport. We had such a good time, and it was free. But it was spending that time with the people that were most important to me that one, builds a legacy with those people, and two, it's the most enjoyable, and it doesn't always have to cost a lot of money.
Yeah, it's interesting. We were talking before we started recording that I went to Portugal last week for our forum retreat. And for those listening, the forum retreat is basically kind of your board of directors within this organization. And we're over there, and they had a small group, probably about 12 members. And these guys, the size of businesses were amazing. And they all decided to live in Portugal. Many of them were not even Portuguese, just because of the lifestyle. They're sitting there by the beach. It's beautiful. We're having the EO event. And the president of the country walks in and had lunch with us. Just walked in the room. He had one security guy that didn't look like he was even armed. Just walked in and just that ability to do what you want when you want is absolutely huge. And I find that the more successful my clients are, the really truly successful ones figured that out a long time ago.
Yeah, I think there's real value in that. I think there's so much in our society nowadays that is so wrapped up in how many zeros can I put after that one. So I got $1 million company. That's great. I got a $10 million company. I got a $100 million company. But when is enough enough? And I think going back to the question about the millennials are figuring out that they're willing to trade some of that money in what perceived prestige for flexibility and freedom. And I think, I would predict over the next 10 years, you're going to see a lot of people who in our generation, between the ages, I'd say 35 and 60, who are going to be adopting that. Hey, I'll trade some flexibility or some money for some flexibility and freedom, because their kids are going to say, I deal with manufacturing talent all the time. And these guys will say, well, I can't do that this weekend because I got to work, or I got to go into the shop, or I got to go do this. Their kids and their grandkids are going to start challenging them. Well, no, you're choosing to go do those things. Can you choose differently? And can you choose to come spend time with your grandkids, or come choose to, go hang out with me and play Frisbee golf, or whatever you want to do? And you're going to see a massive shift, I predict, over the next 10 years on how work here in the United States is accomplished.
Yeah. What do you think is going to happen with the, traditional office setup? Are we going to continue to see these large buildings with, cubicles and staff, or are we going to keep gravitating towards a more diverse work from home environment?
There are some people that can certainly work from home and they do well with it. And there are some people that can't. It's going to be kind of a push or pull. I just started working with a guy named Ari Meisel. He's all about, optimizing, outsourcing in taking things off of your plate that you really either shouldn't be doing because you're not good at. 2, that can be done through automation or an app, or 3, that could be outsourced to somebody who's going to do it better than you at a cost-effective price. So I don't know if we're going to see the world of work change necessarily from a physical location. I mean, you certainly have Freelancer Nation and the gig economy. That's a reality. That's going to get bigger. But I think what you're going to see is how work is accomplished. That's going to shift quite a bit, where people are going to go more towards their unique abilities, things they do well, versus the things they don't do well. And the things they don't do well are going to get optimized, outsourced, or automated. Talking to my son, he's an accountant now, he's studying for a CPA exam, and he predicts within the next 5 to 10 years of his work life, as an accountant, as a tax preparer, he's not going to prepare any taxes. It's going to all be optimized and automated. So he's going to be then meeting with people like you and I and people listening today, and how to do better tax planning, different strategies. But the actual compilation of those tax returns, he goes, I'm going to review it, but it's going to be all done by outsourced technology. It's kind of like, it's just crazy. All the things that he went to school for now, within his lifetime, and he's under 30, will be done by technology.
Yeah. All right. Definitely going to be changing, making serious shifts in the future. I'm curious to see what's going to happen with automobiles. I mean, it's obvious that, electric cars are here. They're going to push out everything except maybe for the Ferraris and Lambos, and the old vintage cars. But, do we really need to have, all the cars we have on the street? We're going to get to a society where everything's Uber and Lyft.
Yeah, I saw there's a new app, and I forgot what it was. My buddy just sent it to me. It's Airbnb for cars. You can actually, get it. Because he's going to. We're going to do a trip together. He's like, hey, I rented us a Lexus for the week. It's somebody's private car, and it's good to go. And he goes, and it's actually cheaper than going through Enterprise. Like, you're kidding. So a lot of that stuff. I mean, the way we do things is, man, it's just crazy how quickly it's changing.
Yeah, when we were in Portugal, I didn't even know this existed. Now there's Airbnb experiences. Mm. We had a photographer walking around with us, documenting the trip, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm an Airbnb experience person." I was like,
"Oh, jeez,
what is that?" So he knows the city, so you hire him, and he takes your group around, and he'll photograph you or show you, what this cathedral is all about. So you're basically tour guides for hire.
Yeah, it's amazing how people are going to be able to really create the work they want to do, the way they want to do it, and enjoy it, as well as providing a great experience like they did for you and your forum.
Yeah. Best business advice you've ever been given?
Best business advice I've ever been given. So I hired a consultant in 2006. And my business was in really, really, really bad shape. I was $600,000 in debt. And 60 days away from running out of cash. And in September of that year, I ended up firing my entire company. And I did that for 2 reasons. 1, I couldn't afford to pay them, so they probably a good idea to get rid of them. And 2, I was letting them, going back to the comment you made about, I just want to be liked. I wanted to be liked by my staff so much I was avoiding the uncomfortable conversations. So what he kept saying to me was like, hey, what do you think you should do about this? And I tell him what I think I should do. He's like, that's awesome. We should totally do that. Why aren't you doing that? You knew that how many years ago? The reality was I was so concerned with being liked, I wasn't following my gut. And he said, listen, you got to follow your gut more. And the way to measure how you follow your gut is it a money-making decision? And you really, ultimately, at the end of the day, if it's a decision that focuses on margin, not on revenue, and it's what you think you should do, it's something worth taking a shot at. Iterate through it quickly. If it doesn't work, stop doing it, but try a bunch of different things. And really, at the end of the day, to follow your gut, measure it and measure it as litmus test against the profitability of your idea, the margin of your idea, really is the best advice I've ever gotten as a business person.
Love it. What's the worst advice you've ever been given? You thought it was good advice at the time. You took it only to find out that it was not.
The worst advice I ever got. Wow. I think it really was the idea and the concept that you should only hire people based upon their resume. And this is a long time ago. This is 20 plus years ago. And I really found that, I do better when I hire for DNA, not for resume. And, just because someone's got a lot of experience in your space doesn't mean it's good experience. Secondarily, if they've had 5 jobs and 8 years in your space, that means there's probably a reason. And but I went this whole phase in early in my career where I hired a bunch of people with staffing industry experience, thought that was the way to go, and found out really when we switched the model from hiring for resume to hiring for DNA, that's really where we grew, because we got good people with the same core value belief system, the believing in the company, going in the right direction versus, well, this is how I used to do it at this company, and this is how I used to do it at that company. And when you hire people with their experience, you hire both their good experience, but you also hire their bad experience.
And how do you test for, or how do you hire for DNA?
It's interesting. So the way I do it is, I meet an internal candidate first, get a feel for them. And this is after they've been through a telephone screening, as well as we use colorcode.com and 16personalities.com as kind of a measurement for those people. I meet them to see if I can work with them. But then, the real decision maker and the real differentiator is I have them meet with 3 of the people they're going to actually work with. Now, internally, we call that the American Idol round, because they're meeting with 3 judges, so to speak. And they sit with those folks, and they can ask them anything. And the amazing conversations that take place once I leave the room, that's really where we make a decision. And we get, person comes through the process. And then the 4 of us, me and the 3 other judges, so to speak, sit in a room, and we vote on whether we want to extend an offer to somebody. And it's amazing how many times I want to make an offer to somebody because I liked them in the process, and they tested well. Like the team says, no, they're not a good fit, and they have definable reasons because they don't get the tests ahead of time. So it's a real good checks and balances of analytics, 16 personalities, colorcode.com. My 23 years of experience, and then sitting with the 3 people that they're going to be working with closely with. If that all doesn't line up, we don't extend an offer.
Wow. Yeah, I tend to find, I know I'm guilty of this, is you find people that you like, and we hire people that we like, and many times we need people to fill different roles that we don't like doing, i.e. the accountant role. If you're a extroverted salesman, the accounting function just doesn't excite you, but that's an important piece of the puzzle in the organization. And sometimes we end up hiring people that are very similar to ourselves, only to find out later that we have too many of us and not enough of them.
No, it's funny. I think my accounting person, if you were to get her on the show, I love Todd. He's like the older brother I wish I could kill. We are very different in our personalities, and we look at the world very differently. And thank goodness that we do.
Yeah, you need that check and balance. So, I don't know who told me this, but I found it to be extremely accurate, and that is one of their, not tests, but one of the things that they were always looking for when hiring someone was they wanted to know how young they were when they got into the workforce, whether they were cutting grass or delivering newspapers as a young man or young woman. And I probably heard this 8 years ago, and I started to ask that question and started hiring people that had started younger.
Okay.
And it's been very successful for me. I was obviously very successful for this person as well. Anything like that you kind of throw in there that's a bit unusual that you're asking or testing for?
Some of the questions I ask are a little weird and esoteric like that. I ask them, if I was not going to hire you, give me 2 reasons why I wouldn't hire you. Because it's really an odd question. It catches them off guard. And it's better than telling me about your weaknesses, because they're going to say, oh, I work too hard, I'm too driven. Right. So I'll ask them that. I often will ask them and I usually, kind of like a guy in the room, I usually wear jeans and a t-shirt to work, and they don't typically know I'm going to interview them, and I give them my card. They see that I'm the president, so it immediately puts them on the offsetting. Right. But what we do as recruiters is we have to deal with people in weird circumstances at work, at home, so they've got to be comfortable being a little caught off guard. And I'll often ask them, like, so tell me about how you grew up. Just real conversational questions. And I try to then weave it into, like I said, the first job. Said, where was the first time in your young life you felt defeated? Or where was the first time you ever felt like a real big success? For salespeople, I ask them, do you remember the first time you either sold something or started a company? I know for me, the first time I started, first entrepreneurial venture I had was in sixth grade. I was selling candy at school that I bought on the way into school because I grew up in a farming town, so there was no vending machines or anything else. And I buy it for nickel and sell for a quarter. The margins are phenomenal, and the principal brought me down to the office and told me not to do it anymore. I'm like, well, that pretty much told me I should work for myself and not for somebody else. I'm not going to be good following the man. So I try to get them to tell me these stories. And for me, I find that people who were really often came from very humble beginnings, people who often paid for their own education or paid a good portion of that. People who, they tell you the stories of some of the real tough challenges in life. Find that a lot of times with single moms, work a lot with those. And just how they were able to persevere is such a key thing, especially for being a recruiter and being in the human capital space, because it's a lot of effort sometimes for a very little result. And it takes that persistent personality to go forward. The kid who comes in, or the young person who comes in, who's always things that, I don't want to say things have gone easy for them, but things have been relatively convenient for them, typically don't make it, because we're in a world right now as recruiters is if we fill 20 to 30% of our opportunities, that's a really good year. So that means 7 out of 10 opportunities, we're not even getting close to hitting the mark, not because we're not trying, but because the people don't exist.
Yeah, it's interesting is I find with a lot of our clients that fear of not being good enough, that fear of not succeeding, that constant drive, even to today, when they have highly successful businesses, that mindset continues to persist. And it's funny because I remember a couple of cases, like, can you just help me with that? Just get rid of that for me. I said, well, why do we want to get rid of that? It's working for you. I understand that it's not necessarily creating a happy or fulfilling scenario, but on your journey, be careful what you change, because that fuel's been working for you. If we can create a sense of going after something and being drawn towards something, a compelling future is going to be a lot easier. But people use that fuel an awful lot. Do you see that a lot in your clients as well?
Especially with the clients I have through Extraordinary Advisors, a lot of them are the kids in high school that were not the most popular. We're always had that I got to prove something to somebody. And it's amazing how when I really talk with them, and I do a diagnostic before I engage with somebody, because I really want to know, are they the kind of person that's going to have some stick-to-itiveness? They may have been the star of the football team or the star of the baseball team. But then, tell me about the first time you failed. And I'm working with a guy right now who's a Division I athlete, and he was injured. So he never got a shot at the pros. And to hear him just talk about how he has to grind through things, and I take it back. Well, how did you use your college athletic ability? Because you obviously are really good if you had a Division I scholarship. How did you? He's like, I wasn't good in elementary school. I wasn't good in junior high school. So I told my coach that I wanted to be the best I could be. What did I have to do? And he goes, do something small every day. Have a success every day. I said, how do you translate in the business? He goes, he goes, I work at it every single day. Because for me, it's not about the journey. It's not about the result. It's about the journey. And I push that through my employees, and I push that through my company. He said, do you ever run into a situation where you don't feel like you're ever not satisfied? He goes, no, because I reversed that. I'm satisfied every single day. And I like that satisfaction because it was hard earned, and I'm going to go out and get it again tomorrow. And one of the coaches that I still have a coach, and one of the things he says to me, really simple, is happipness is a myth. If you want happiness, eat a lot of chocolate, enjoy the spike of dopamine. And he's one of the world's most leading neuroscientists. He goes, if you want to have a great life, you have to have a satisfaction attached to it. And to be satisfied, you have to have hard times so that when you get to the goal, you understand the journey you took. Because at the end of the day, he goes, failure is a myth. Failure doesn't exist. I said, what do you mean? Failure is nothing more than a pathway along to your ultimate success, wherever that's going to take you. But if you have an expectation of where you're going to be disappointed. So remember that failure doesn't occur. Failing doesn't happen. If you did something and it didn't work out, well, you learn from it. And those kind of things, if I get people like that in my world, whether it's the people who work for me at Diversified or the people I coach at Extraordinary, it's such an enjoyable journey that I could do it 7 days a week.
Yeah. Attitude, I think, is everything. That's if I look back on employees that did not work out, it came down to, it wasn't how well they did their job or did not do the job. It's just the attitude. That's something I can't. I don't want to come in every day and be surrounded by people that are not uplifting.
It's so important. It's so important because you're going to have, any business is going to have tough days, and most businesses are going to have really good days. And the more stable the mindset is around those, like you're saying, it's so important. And then, like what I always try to coach my staff to be is, how do you become what we call an and then some employee? This is my job and then some. This is my responsibility and then some. This is the things I have to do, and then I have to be a good teammate, and then I have to be a caring partner to my coworkers. It's those people who are really, at least for me, are the glue within any organization. If we care about one another, we will come to work and create a lot of momentum versus, I only care about myself and I'm coming in to do a job. It's just a subtle tweak, but it's so important.
Yeah. Someone was explaining the analogy with a football team to me one day, and it was, the quarterback's responsibility is to manage the team, throw the ball, hand it off to the running back. But as soon as the ball is dropped and fumbled on the playing field, it's everybody's responsibility to make sure that they get there and they protect it. And he used two words. One was responsible. One was, it's going to escape me. But the idea is that we all have a responsibility or a job to do. But when something happens, it's everybody's job to make sure that we're doing that same thing.
And I think that really goes back to the culture, and it goes back to how is that culture set forth. You take a look at a team like New England Patriots. They're one of the most successful franchises in the last 20 years. They've got a coach, who's Belichick, who's the designated leader, but then they have Brady, who's the leader in the clubhouse, and they have to work together, and they're not always going to agree. But at the end of the day, they have that one common focus of excellence above all else. And here's our process, and we don't deviate from our process, and they bring in guys.
Well, Todd, we actually had the opportunity to experience the first thing here on the Peak Performers podcast. The audience will probably notice it a little bit, but in the middle of you giving absolute words of wisdom, the internet gods decided to sever the show. It was probably too much content, too valuable of content to give away for free, and they're like, no, we can't do that. So I don't even know where we're going to actually make the cut on this thing, but we were talking about employees and how to find the best. And I know you have a book, so let's just use this as a plug for the book so they can go there.
Well, the book is actually called The Job Search Process, and it's available on Amazon or through Barnes & Noble, and it's really designed for the young person getting their first job out of high school or college. So it really teaches you how to find your first job in less than 6 weeks. And it teaches you how to be that and then some employee so that you're able to go in, nail the interview, get the offer, and get your career started on the right path.
That's right. Now, let me ask you this, and I have not read the book, but what you just described to me also sounds like what we do every day in our organizations, where we're going in and our job interview is actually with our prospect. The lessons that you outline in the book and the techniques, can any of those be used to actually create an environment where you're actually selling yourself to your prospects?
There's a lot of universal applications. It's funny. Someone read the book one time, and they were having dinner, and they're telling me, like, so basically, in the book, you're teaching people how to sell themselves and put their best foot forward. He goes, really, your book should really be more about like first dates. I'm like, oh, brother, you're kidding me. But it is that opportunity, because if you think about an interview and a first date, you got an eager young man and an eager young lady. Well, you got an eager employee and
guy's always eager. Hopefully, the lady's eager as well.
You got to find, but you got to find that common ground. You got to get through. You got to be as authentic and transparent, as vulnerable as you can, and you got to find, hey, are we a good match? Well, that's really what the book teaches you how to figure out is, and it takes people through the process of trying to figure out who you are, what is your best skill set you bring forward. Combine that is taking part of the interview in finding out what does that employer need. What are their pain points, and how can you meet those pain points? And so many people nowadays are such poor interviewers We were just hiring for an internal position at Diversify. Had a person come in, and always say, well, so do you have any questions for us? And some people have really great questions. And her first question was, well, how quickly do I qualify for a vacation time? Well, if she didn't realize the interview was done at that point, then her follow-up question of, hey, by the way, do you have any flexibility? Because I really need a couple weeks off for this vacation I've already got planned. Now, I understand that people have lives. I get that. That's not a good first question. The first question, could be, tell me a little bit more about this. I saw this on your website. I saw this initiative. I saw this PR announcement. Saw this media piece. What were you guys doing? How'd that work out? Show a little interest in the other party, just like on a first date, versus, hey, let me talk more about me to you so you can learn more about how great I am. Yeah, that doesn't carry a lot of weight anymore.
This is great. I'm single. Now, I was not voted one of the top most eligible bachelors in Detroit like you were. So I didn't have I didn't have the press behind me. So,
I might do research.
I might have to get the book here. It's kind of like going on a first date. And, the girl says, I've got 5 cats, I got 3 kids, and I really just need somebody to marry so they can take care of us.
Well, then you should know, do you want to be a cat dad? Do you want to have a financial responsibility for several children that don't belong to you? Those are all choices you, Thor, my friend, have to make.
Well, I got to get the book so I can start figuring out the right questions to ask.
Well, the better, I think, in that kind of case, it's so funny. So in that kind of case, I say, well, tell me more about how did you get there? Because sometimes people have just the best stories, which are always fun. Yeah. And, it's like, and I talk about this, I did an article about this, about how do you compare and contrast dating versus first interviews. And the reality is, if you go into the interview with the very best of intentions, just like on a date, versus the expectation that you found the love of your life, or the expectation the employer is going to make you a job offer on the very first date, or the very first interview, that intention of putting your best foot forward, the intention of getting to know that other person, whether it's the interviewer or the person sitting across from you at dinner, that mindset really, really, I think, can make a huge difference in getting you where you want to go if you're looking for that relationship or that career, versus that, again, that people smell fear, right? Animals smell fear. They also smell desperation. It's like, well, Thor, tell me about your dating history. Well, you're my 5th date this week, and the other 4 didn't go so well, so I'm really hoping I got a shot here. Probably not your best lead in line.
What it reminds me of it as well is that, relationships, just like job interviews, is a place where you go to figure out how you can add value.
Absolutely.
If you're looking to extract value, people will smell that, and you will not be well received. But you go in trying to figure out how you can provide value to someone or someone's organization. Or look, can you imagine going to a sales meeting and say, look, I'd like to close this sale because we really need the cash this week. And, it's getting a little tough around here, so I got to close this thing. No, you close those deals. How? This is what I can provide, and this is the value I'm going to be able to offer you.
And this is what you said you needed. Mr. Customer, this is what you need. Here's how I can help solve that problem. I know my solution, my problem may not be for everybody, but here's why I think it applies to you. Are you interested? Really, the ultimate goal, I think, of anybody in an interview or sales presentation, or even on a first date, can I get to a yes or no? Because that spin cycle of maybe just creates a lot of frustration and tension. It creates, we're seeing ghosting in the dating world, but you're also seeing ghosting in the job world. You'd be surprised, and I'm sure your audience is going to gasp with shock, or like gasp with, yeah, that's happened to me, where you offer a job to somebody and they don't show up on their first day after they've accepted the job at the salary they said they wanted. Yeah. It is the most ridiculous thing out there, but it's happening all the time. And a survey just came out, and the people who are behaving that way feel they're right and justified 60% of the time. Well, hey, I had a better offer come in. Well, did you think of telling the person you weren't going to show up? Now they'll figure it out when they don't show up. Well, no kidding. But just that courtesy and that human connectivity, it's just bad karma to treat people that way.
Yeah, I agree. Tell the audience how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, anybody who's interested in and likes what they've heard today, I'm happy to, if you just mentioned you heard me on Thor's program, happy to give you an hour of my coaching time for free and talk about anything you want, from hiring to, the 4 pillars of business to I guess if you really want to talk about your dating life, we can do that too. I'm pretty
I think
open.
I'm just calling about my dating life. I mean,
There you go. Well, and I appreciate Thor mentioning that I was one of Detroit's most eligible bachelors many, many years ago.
Did it work out? Are you still one of the most eligible bachelors, or is that changed?
That has changed. I was, but now I am no longer. So I have a wonderful young lady in my life. So I'm a lucky guy. But again, enough about me, more about your audience. So if anybody in your audience is interested in having a conversation, I'm happy to book an hour of time for free. You just go to extraordinaryadvisors.com, fill out the about you form, and Kelly will get you on the schedule, and we can have a conversation. And from going back to one of the first things we originally talked about is the value of an EO relationship and the value of having that board of advisors. An entrepreneur alone is an entrepreneur at risk. So if there's an entrepreneur out there that feels alone, give me a call. Happy to talk you off the ledge a little bit. It's something we all struggle with, so you're not alone.
Yeah, if it's to be, it's not up to me, it's up to we. Flip it up.
Absolutely.
All right, brother. Thank you very much. That was awesome. I'm glad we just pushed through. There is no failure. We lost internet in the middle of the thing. I don't even know what words of wisdom you were laying down, but you know what? This is going to be the first edited podcast show that we've ever done, and hopefully the splice together will work.
I have complete confidence that you're going to nail this, and you got to have me back on so I can hear how this dating advice is translated into your potential future wedding.
I love it. I love it, man. I can take all the advice you have because it's as you know it's not easy out there.
It's a bit of a challenge. That could be a whole other show.
It could be.
All
right, brother. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
Hey, Thor, thanks for having me on. I had a great time, man.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome.